Hi, John Murphy of LPF Training. I'm here at my friend Nick and Chris Schaffner's range, Arm, Missouri, lovely Bland, Missouri, a cutting-edge facility, exactly where you need to train. Today's topic for this lecture is a rehash of a video I did about 4.5 years ago on principles for the armed lifestyle. And I've learned a few things along the way, so I've refined stuff just a touch. So number one principle for us: when the gun goes on, the ego comes off. When you equip yourself to take a life in a heartbeat, well, it has got to be worth it. And worth it can only be defined by an imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury. You cannot defend your ego. Self-defense does not include your feels. You have to let stuff go that normally you might interject on. Because, well, there's one person at a conflict guaranteed to be armed, and that would be you if you've adopted this lifestyle. Gun goes on, ego comes off. Next up, we want to stay in the high brain. We have essentially three brains. Our inner core brain, referred to by some as the reptilian brain, well, that runs our heart and our lungs. It gives us fight or flight in some regard, from the bright lights, stuff like that, reptilian brain. Above that, we have our social monkey brain, and that's interactions and frequently a response to conflict with our monkey brain as well. We fling poop at each other like monkeys do. That's our social brain. But above that, we have the higher thinking brain, and that's the part of the brain that allows us to see a big picture, derive strategies, and move toward our goal. Now, our goal is to just get home. Staying in the high brain can be very difficult, particularly if you encounter a situation where here's your normal daily activity, and suddenly there's a novel event that blows past your shock threshold and gives you a momentary pause to think, like, what is going on here? I don't understand. This is new to me. That will generally trigger what my friend John Hearn refers to as the orienting response. Like, what is going on here? That is a time gap. And John Farnham taught us that we die in the gaps. Now, a way to keep that gap full, or raise that gap higher, I should say, is to periodically engage in what-ifing. What if this? What if that? Because if your mind has a plan for an event and then you realize that event, and you are still operating within the threshold of your mental capacity and experience, and it protects your shock threshold. Now, I'm not going to relate the full story, but I will link in the comments to a video of the Apollo 12 liftoff in 1969, and an event there that took place which threatened the whole mission. Everyone knows Apollo 11, everyone knows Apollo 13, but Apollo 12 became just within a whisker of failing, but it succeeded ultimately because a Navy test pilot who expected things to break, well, when things broke, they knew how to handle it. I'll link in the comments and spare you all the whole story, but it's one of my favorites. Pete Conrad, my favorite astronaut. This next bit requires a lot of introspection. You have to know yourself. What sets you off? What makes you happy? What puts you ill at ease? Think of yourself as a collection of buttons, switches, dials, and levers. And on any given day, your buttons, switches, dials, and levers are set to a different setting for different circumstances. If you give someone access to your buttons, switches, dials, and levers, they can prompt you or move you from the high brain to the monkey brain to the reptilian brain. And ladies and gentlemen, that puts us into a situation where we can make poor decisions and do ill-considered things. So know yourself. Know what your real capabilities are. Am I always capable of a sub-second shot? Well, not always, no. Am I always capable of doing exactly the right thing at all times? No. I have to understand that I'm a human person. So that's your part of this equation. The other part are the people that are in your life, in your circle, that can be with you when you're out and about. And how do they act to these circumstances, and can they potentially drag you into something? If you've got a drama llama in your life, I might consider maybe clipping that branch off your bonsai tree. Though if you're married, well, that's a whole different thing. You should have known what you got into. That's just you have to manage it, right? But know yourself and know your circle. This next bit, know where you are, and there are different perspectives on where you are. There is the physical arena that you find yourself in. Right now, I'm in a classroom, tables, chairs, student audience, exits, windows, the whole 9 yards. It could be a parking lot, a convenience store, your own home. The physical layout. Now, on top of that, there's a layer. That would be the emotional layer. Different places are charged with different emotions. Drinking establishments, bars, churches, political events, court proceedings, weddings, funerals. There is an emotional charge to every environment. You have to be aware of it. Now, on top of that is a cultural layer. There are some cultures that you just don't do certain things. For instance, if I walk into a biker bar and announce that Harley sucks, Honda rules, I will have just violated the cultural norm. And America is a multicultural environment, and you have to be aware of what cultures you can encounter, respect cultures, honor cultures. You don't do this, don't do that. I can't believe you just did that. And the consequences of your actions in that environment. Now, on top of all of that is the legal environment. The legal environment. And that is a really complex question right now, because I can be in one jurisdiction and do one act of self-defense and be completely justified. If I cross a geographic boundary somewhere, I've entered a different jurisdiction, and it's a whole new ball game. So the legal environment is crucial to understand where you are. Now, going through all of these environments, well, what time is it? You have to know what time it is. There's a temporal element layer to this. If I'm in one particular place and it's perfectly fine until 8 o'clock at night, by 8:30 it turns wrong, well, I have to know what time it is. Time is also a prompt of it's time to do a thing. It's time to walk out that door. It's time to say this. It's time to employ pepper spray. It's time to employ lethal force. What time is it? That is all. These are all perspectives on knowing what time it is in the place where you are, knowing yourself. Thing slicing is a heuristic means by which we can use our personal experiences, thoughts, and knowledge, and generally get an idea of who it is we're dealing with. Over time, we all get pretty good at it, but you have to be careful to avoid the moment of willful disbelief or operant conditioning. Now, I'll give you an example of that in just a moment. Thin slice people, and there's a variety of means to do it. Generally, back up one there, we go. Thin slice the people, and you know who you're dealing with. And read the room. Like I mentioned earlier, every room has its own vibe to it, if you will. Thin slice the people, read the room. Avoid the stupids, and this comes to us from John Farnham. And John was the first instructor I had after leaving the military. And John's dicta on this is, don't go to stupid places with stupid people at stupid times and do stupid things. It's amazing how calm and sedate your life can be if you apply those simple rules. Generally, you can maybe violate one, but for every additional violation, you increase the likelihood of something stupid happening. And let's be honest, any more stupid can find us at any place at any time. Am I saying don't leave home? No. But I'm just saying there are certain parts of common sense we have to apply to our daily lives about where to go and when. Make pre-decisions. If you have conceived of circumstances beforehand and have decided what you're going to do by then, it greatly increases your speed of recognition, decision, action. Everyone's about speed to that first shot. Well, for me, the real bonus is speed of recognition of what's happening. That gives me more time, which gives me more options. Additionally, I watched a podcast, a couple weeks ago. It was a former Delta Force operator, pretty sharp guy. And he talked about predecisions from a perspective of it takes the emotion out of it. If you have certain criteria set, say for departing an establishment, and these criteria are set, well, there's no emotion involved in it, we leave. It's like, well, we've already ordered. Well, no. The predecision, to borrow another a NASA phrase, the mission rule is, when we hit these criteria, we do a thing. And it's revealing that in my own life, every time I violated one of my predecision mission criteria, there's been a cost associated with it. I'll give an example. Some years ago, I was teaching a class, and I held forth eloquently on a topic. It was Culpeper. It was very hot, and I felt zip down my pant leg. And I realized, holy cow, that was the retention screw to my holster. So I stopped the class, picked up the screw, and said, never carry a gun in a compromised holster. Because a holster has to do certain things, number one of which, hold the gun securely. But it was late, and we were almost done, so I put the screw in my pocket. I'll take care of this after the class. Well, after the class, the students leave, and I noticed it was hot, and I was tired. And I thought, you know what, I'll take care of this when I get home. So I'm driving home, and my phone finally just dies. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to the Verizon store and take care of this right now. So I park the truck, leave the air conditioning on for my dog Night, and he's zonked out. I'm walking into the store, I trip over the curb, and the gun just comes flying out. Just skitters along the safe pavement. I'm like, okay, I hear you. I violated the mission rule of not carrying in a compromised holster, utter hypocrisy, and within 2 hours had been made to pay for it. Monitor your broadcast. Everywhere you go, when you're interacting with people, you are broadcasting. Where you are, when you're there, what you're doing, how you're dressed, what you're saying, who you're with. Everything is a broadcast. Now, some people are not paying attention. Other people are paying attention just because they're aware of their surroundings themselves, and that's what they do. And others, well, they're looking for that wounded gazelle, that moment of inattention on the plains of the Great Serengeti, because they're predators. So we have to be aware of what we're broadcasting into that environment. Next up is have a contract. If you're out and about with adults, and say you're in a restaurant, and one of your adult friends that you've trained up, you've talked to, is kind of switched on, they say, we're leaving out that door right now. The contract calls for we pick up and we move out that door right now. Because they have seen something that has triggered their senses, their mission rules. And since you've agreed to them because you have a contract, you just got to pick up and move. I liken it to a fighter pilot with a wingman that's called brake right. There's no conversation. We just brake to the right, and off we go. Next up is grant yourself permission. I got this from an instructor who's retired now, but it's really important, I think. It's okay to fight for yourself. It really is. At that moment of decision, that moment of threat, that moment of concern, it's grant yourself permission to fight for yourself. But I'm going to expand upon that just a bit. I'm going to say it's okay to be humiliated. It's okay to be embarrassed. It's okay to swallow your pride and extricate yourself from a situation that is on the verge of turning very, very bad. You may have some regrets later. I know I have a couple. I'm thinking some right now of a moment or two. But I am physically intact. My finances are okay. I've got freedom to drive about the country and meet you fine people. So it's okay to be embarrassed because the consequences of acting irrationally, emotionally at that moment, well, they can be very, very high. The stakes, the consequences are extreme. Finally, decisive departure is 99.9% your best option, skill, and tactic. To include walking away, running away, or that long, skinny pedal on the right of the car, driving away, depending upon which class I'm teaching. Just get home. What's our purpose? Just get home. And that concludes this presentation. I appreciate your time very much. I hope to see you on the range.